Hey guys, new day, new video. So like I said in the text of the last video, I wanted to do kind of a quick breakdown of the changes that we saw in my father. Just because I know the last video was kind of long, and it unfortunately had to be long. It was pretty much everything that we went through. It was stories, anecdotes, examples. But what I'm going to do here is I've got my little notes, and I'm going to go through some of the changes that we saw in him in no particular order. It's just these are things that happened over time. Everything kind of, I don't want to say that it's in no particular order, because it was almost like everything happened at one time and then just escalated from there. So real quick, let's go over some of those. Okay, so the first one that we saw start to happen were he started to have delusions. And some of these other things that I have pointed out in here are going to fit into his delusions. But okay, for instance, one of his delusions was that he was wealthy. He was telling everybody that would listen that he was a multimillionaire. He was not. He did work all of his life. He had a decent job, but he was by no means a multimillionaire. He wasn't even close. But for whatever reason, that was a goal of his. Everything, when my father was healthy, everything in life revolved around money. So one of his goals was that he wanted to be wealthy. So when he became sick and started to have delusions, he decided he was. So he was telling people he was a multimillionaire. He started telling people, it started out that he had a vacation home in Beaufort, North Carolina. Don't know why he chose Beaufort, but apparently he told everybody that he had a vacation home in Beaufort, North Carolina. Then it escalated to he had a vacation home in Beaufort, and he also had a vacation home in an unspecified area of Maine. And then from there, yeah, this continues. He had the vacation home in Beaufort where his boxer lived, the dog, okay? He apparently had a boxer down there that his neighbors took care of when he wasn't there. He had this other home in Maine, and then he had a home just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. I don't even know if my father's ever been to the Phoenix area of Arizona. He may have, I don't know, but he used to take business trips and all, but I don't remember anywhere around Phoenix or anywhere in Arizona actually being there. I know he went on a vacation with my mom to Maine, and he'd been to Beaufort several times, but the Arizona one was a little bit strange. But those were the kinds of delusions that he started to have, and as I said, they did escalate as time went on. Something else that we had to deal with from him was obsessive behavior. I did mention in the last video that he started to watch this show called The West Wing. He had several other shows, but The West Wing seemed to be the one that he obsessed over the most. There was some Netflix original, I can't remember the name of it, that he was obsessed with for a while. The Jesse Stone shows he was obsessed with for a while. And there was, I don't know, it was another cop show that he was obsessed with. I can't remember it. But The West Wing. Oh my God, The West Wing. Like I said, I checked his Netflix account. He had actually been spending, and I'm not exaggerating, he spent 12 hours a day watching The West Wing. He did this for months on end, which means that he watched the entire series several times. To the point where I think he probably could have recited most of the lines for most of the episodes. So that was one of his big obsessions. Something else that he started to do is he started to spend money like he had all the money in the world. As I had said earlier, he had this delusion that he was a multimillionaire, but he started to spend as if he was, and that was a problem because he was getting into his into his retirement account, which was actually a joint account between him and my mom, and they had both contributed to their entire lives. But he decided that that entire retirement fund was his. My mother didn't have one, and he was going to spend the entire thing. That was great. What ended up happening was he actually purchased, you ready for this? He actually purchased a manufactured home. That he was trying to go down to Beaufort actually to put the home in, like he was trying to find land. And he was telling people he already had a home there, but he was trying to find land that he was also going to purchase. He didn't succeed, but he did purchase a pre-manufactured home. He purchased 2 Subarus and a Honda Accord. Thankfully, my mother was able to cancel all those sales. She was able to show proof that he had brain cancer, and she was able to cancel the car purchases and the home. Thank God. But there was a lot of other little things that he bought. Like, he bought a lot of electronics and things, some of which we actually still haven't found. We've got bills for them. We have receipts for them. I was able to get into his computer, and I found like places that he was actually purchasing from, and I found, you know, orders and things like that. So there was a bunch of electronic stuff that he ordered. We have no idea where any of it is. I did find his Kindle and a router. There was a Kindle and a router that I found. But we never found any of the other stuff that he purchased. He also became very demanding. For instance, he wanted me to quit my full-time job so that I could stay at home and basically wait on him. I was taking care of him as best I could, so was my mother. But as I had said in the previous video, he wanted us to stay awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I guess he wanted us to work in shifts or something, because somebody had to be up with him all the time, and he just needed that. I don't know why. He started, it escalated so that it was outside of the family. If he met strangers on the street, he just assumed that they were there to do things for him. They should be doing stuff, and he would stop people on the street and just start giving them orders. And when I say giving orders, I mean like really giving orders, like barking orders at somebody. Our next door neighbor, he was calling her all hours of the day and night to come over and change bandages or do whatever that was, you know. He had her coming over here constantly doing stuff. Why she kept coming, I don't know. And she's still a friend of the family. That's friendship. But like, he wanted me to stay home and do things for him that he was perfectly capable of doing himself, but he didn't want to. And he figured that he actually told my mother that the only reason he had a child was to, you know, have somebody to take care of him when he got old. And my mother kind of argued with him about it, and I've always been kind of the nurse. It's why I live at home, because, you know, both of my parents have their issues and all, so I'm living at home to help them with those. My mom's mildly handicapped. My father at the time only had, he had heart issues, and so he was very mildly handicapped, but then he got the brain cancer. But he wanted me to do things for him, like hold his urinal. You know, he wanted me to he wanted to be able to point and have me get or do whatever it was that he wanted. He didn't want to have to get out of his chair at all, ever, for any reason. And like I said, that escalated to outside the family when we were at restaurants. He was horrible to waitstaff in restaurants. We had to stop taking him to restaurants because he was so bad with waitstaff, it wasn't even funny. But he just assumed everybody on earth was here to serve him, and he treated them as such, and it was really a lot of fun trying to keep that under control outside of the house. He also seemed to always be angry at me for some reason. He would go for weeks, not just not speaking to me, but not even acknowledging my existence or my presence in the room. And we never knew what he was angry about. He did this to my mother too, but he didn't so much stop speaking to my mother as he did the exact opposite. He was constantly screaming at her, constantly fighting with her. And it was, you know, he just seemed to always be angry at the both of us all the time. There was also the lack of attention to his appearance, and I mentioned that in the last video quite extensively. Clothes that were way too small for him. He was going out in his pajamas. He was wearing 2 different shoes. His clothes were always stained. It was pretty bad, and it was a lot different from the way he used to be, which was he never walked out of the house even to get the mail without looking, at least decent. As I also mentioned in the last video, he would have these violent mood swings. It was like somebody flipped the switch. He would walk into a room and he would be real happy and he'd be laughing and joking, and then just like halfway through a sentence he would turn and just start yelling and screaming, and we never knew what was going to set him off. He didn't necessarily need to be set off. He would just be mid-sentence and just, that was the end. He just would start screaming, and yeah, and then again, mid-sentence, he'd be back to normal, and he'd be laughing and, talking about things. And my father also started to use a lot of foul language. For as long as I can remember him, he cursed once in a while, but nothing really hardcore, he just didn't, and it wasn't a common thing with him. Once he got sick, though, it was like every other word out of his mouth was an F-bomb, which I never in my life heard him drop an F-bomb until he got sick. And just constantly, this, that, and the next thing, he started being very vulgar. He was making weird comments to people. Oh, the racism. The racism was bad. My father was always borderline, but he started to say some stuff that was like jaw-droppingly racist, like not like, I know people argue about racism and everything now, but the comments that he was making, blatant. I mean, just over the top, blatant. You're standing there blushing and like, did that actually come out of the mouth of a human in 2015? Because it was 2015 at that point. So did that actually come out of the mouth of somebody in 2015? Where did that come from? So there was a lot of foul language and there was a lot of racism. This could also probably be lumped in with delusions, but I wanted to separate it out. As I said in the last video, they have a dog. It's a Bichon Frise. Her name is Sadie. She's a 14-pound, little fluffy white dog. And he started to get very aggressive towards her. And this is previous to the story I told in the last video where he tried to kill her with the chocolate. This is a different kind of thing. Just as an example, she was on him, and she has this anxiety thing where she licks a lot, and she'll lick everything. She'll lick the carpet, the furniture, your clothes, your hands, whatever. She especially loves to lick your hands. And she jumped up on his lap, and she was sitting there for a few minutes, and this was one of the rare occasions where he didn't immediately pick her up and throw her off of his lap. And she started to lick his hand. And he freaked out, started screaming, "The dog's trying to eat me, the dog's trying to eat me." And that kind of thing happened quite a bit. He kept on thinking the dog was trying to steal his food. He kept thinking the dog was trying to eat him. He thought the dog was trying to push him out of bed one night. It was just a whole lot of crazy stuff that just obviously was not happening. And the dog wasn't going to eat a 6'1" man, so... My father also thought everybody was out to get him. He thought everybody was talking behind his back. He thought everybody was plotting behind his back. He thought my mother was cheating on him. He thought my mom was, was planning to throw him out of the house. And, it was a whole bunch of stuff. And he was like that with the wait staff in restaurants as well. He thought they were, doing things to his food. And, yeah, he just thought the entire world was out to get him. So he also started to eat and drink a lot more. The eating was probably part of the medication, because one of the things that they gave him was a steroid. And I had mentioned, he had the moon face and stuff like that. But he was, I don't even know how to describe the eating. It was almost an obsessive eating. He was eating literally constantly. He would get up in the middle of the night to go in and eat. One night I came downstairs for something. I forget what I came down for, and it was about midnight. And he was down in the kitchen, and he had a piece of bread that he had made. And it was a thick piece of bread. It was, it was like this. And I swear to you, there was at least an inch thick of butter on top of this thing. And there was another inch to 2 inches thick of jelly on top of that. And he put the corner of it into his mouth. Okay, you're not going to believe this, but he put the corner of it into his mouth, put his hand on it, and literally shoved it in. It was like something out of a cartoon. Now, this next one I didn't personally see, but my next door neighbor talks about it all the time. Apparently, she stopped at the house one day while I was at work, and she had brought my parents like a full tub of ice cream. I don't, is it half gallon or whatever it is, but not the little like Ben and Jerry's ones, but the big ones like Breyer's ice cream and all. And she had gotten it, I think, at Trader Joe's, and it was some seasonal ice cream. It was like pumpkin or something. I don't know. It was something seasonal. And she brought that over for the family to eat. And my father asks if he can see it. So she hands it to him. He opens it up and he grabs a spoon and he just starts eating it out of the container. And he's just shoving it in his mouth, shoving it in his mouth. He ate the entire container of ice cream in one sitting. Got a lot of it all over the front of him and then just left it there. And the container, we weren't allowed to throw it out, so it sat on the end table for like 3 days before my mom was able to snatch it up and throw it in the trash. But that kind of thing. He was eating a lot. The drinking part of it, when I say drinking, I mean alcohol. We couldn't get him to drink water. We were begging him to drink water or juice or something. And most of the time he refused it. He was drinking alcohol. He would drink wine at home, and before he was sick, he would drink wine. But like he would have a glass of wine at night, just in the evening, because his heart doctor told him it was good for his heart. So he'd have a glass of red wine in the evening. Then he started buying white wines and blushes and stuff, and then one glass turned into 2, which turned into 3, which turned into an entire bottle. Then it turned into 2 bottles. We found out later on when we started getting credit card bills in that he was racking up tabs at bars. We don't know when or how. He used to wait till my mom went to take a shower, and then he would jump in his car and sneak out. So he'd be gone by the time she got out of the shower, and she had no idea where he was going, how long he was going to be gone, nothing. But, he was coming home and he was completely drunk and completely unlike my father. He never did this before, and this was just something new with the illness. He also took up cigar smoking. That was very short-lived, mostly because we told him we weren't going to tolerate the cigars in the house. And my next door neighbor actually, snatched a cigar out of his mouth and, turned it out with a hose. It was pretty funny. But, yeah, he came home with a bunch of cigars one day, and he's smoking them out in the driveway and everything. And that again was also completely unlike my father. He actually had a plan to kill my mother. I mentioned that whole story in the last video, so I won't go back over that. If you want to see that, go ahead and back over to the last video. But we actually found out, we had a judge actually tell us that when a person, if a person just says, "I'm going to kill you," it's, it's kind of a passive thing. But when he actually lays out a plan, that's when you kind of need to take it seriously. And my mom was told that by several people, one of them being the judge and another one being a social worker. They both said the same thing. It was a scary ordeal that he actually had a plan. So, yeah, he, for whatever reason, decided he was going to kill my mother. He was also pretty much out to get the both of us. The ultimate goal became clear the sicker he got. He wanted us out of the house. He would call the police, as I mentioned earlier, he would call the police every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't every morning, but it was a good number of them. It would be 2-3 times a week. And every time he kept on trying to tell them that my mother was abusing him, or, you know, this, that, or the next thing. Now, he kept on trying to force me out of the house. He kept trying to kick me out. But with my mother, he kept on trying to get her arrested. And I, honest to God, I don't know why. We don't know what the point of that was. It was like, on one hand, he wanted us to do everything for him, and then on the other hand, he just wanted us to leave. He just wanted us gone. So it was kind of like two issues were fighting against each other. But like I said, he was always mad at me. He was always mad at my mother. He tried to kill her. But before that, he was constantly trying to get her arrested. Everything he did was about trying to get her arrested. So, now, those are just some of the changes that we witnessed in my father. Obviously, it's not a, you know, it's not a whole list. This was over about, I guess, that particular stretch, I'm only talking about when he was at home. So that was from November of 2014 until April of 2015. Just to give you an idea. That's the span of time where all of this stuff started to change. So it started to happen pretty much immediately. Again, like I've said in all these other videos, just because it happened to us and it was our experience doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be yours. I'm just offering this up to let you know that changes do occur. They are normal, but I don't know if his changes were typical or if they were bizarre or whatever it was. They're certainly bizarre to us. But I don't want you to take this as religion. I don't want you to turn around and say, oh, the patient I'm taking care of is going to do all this. They may not. So, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if it's typical. This is just our experience. So take it for what it's worth.